It's not.
It says live.
Yeah, but it's not live on YouTube yet for some reason.
It is live for me.
It is?
Yeah.
Why
I'm
don't we
just
ask
Say
our
hi. Say hi to everyone.
let's ask our audience, are we live? Let me just see. It's my browser that is a bit slow. Okay, we seem to be live. Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, we are
So,
live.
okay, we are live. We are live. So, as you can all see, we are having some technical issues, but we are back after a hiatus of what, like almost like 2.5 months, maybe, like, or I think the last one was in July, right? So we are very happy to be back here with all of you, and we stopped for the holidays, and then we had holidays at different times, but now we are all back.
There's new
So
people. Sandra, there's new people in the chat asking to introduce yourselves.
okay, right. So
You mean you don't know who we are?
right,
You just
how
clicked
dare
on
you?
a random link.
Exactly. You come to our page.
That's great. That's also that's also very good. Welcome.
You introduce
Well,
yourselves.
You don't know what you're in for.
exactly. Who are you? Right?
Exactly.
So, okay, I think that we are like, I am Sandro Mancuso. I'm one of the co-founders of Codurance. We have Mesh, the other co-founder, and Jose, the managing director for Codurance Spain. Sorry, guys, I just introduced yourselves. So
Good idea. Thank you very much.
yeah. And we are the
We're
so
just
we are
a bunch of dudes that like to talk about stuff.
exactly.
And this is how
So
this
just a
came
bunch
to
of dudes then.
exactly.
And then of course that besides running Codurance, like we love talking about a lot of subjects, and this is a way for us to get together and talk about things that we not always have time to talk about, and we don't rehearse this. We just pick a topic, and the discussions, they happen live in front of you. For example, I don't know what Mash and Jose are going to say about QA. We know that we have different opinions of it, but I'm not quite sure exactly what they are. Wow, we have some people from Mexico joining us, so welcome. Okay, so with no further ado, let's get cracking then. So the topic that we picked today is about the role of QA. Well, let's first of all, the role is that the topic is about quality assurance. So then there is
Is
a
it?
discussion in here. Well,
Is
I don't
it?
know, right? So at least the fireside chat is about quality assurance. That was the initial thinking, but then as you already noticed, like, is quality assurance a role? Is it something else? Uh, so how does it like overlap with other roles, or even with testers? Who should do what? How is it structured in different companies? So we wanted just to have a chat about our views of QA, and then see if we get get some clarity here, and we would love, and while we are doing that, so contribute on the chat as well, on the live chat. So we'll be looking at any comments that you might have or questions that you might want to ask us. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified of other fireside chats, and leave the thumbs up. So this always helps, and so more people can have access to those videos. So to get started, guys, like, what is quality assurance for you? So how would you see quality assurance? And that's a very open-ended question. You can do whatever you want with it.
It's I was actually, the title was QA, right? And I was kind of half joking because QA, when people say QA, they mean two things. They either mean quality assurance or they mean quality analyst. And I'd say that let's go down the quality assurance route. So when we say QA, let's qualify that to mean quality quality assurance. Uh, but then if people don't normally say quality assurance, they always say like, oh, I need a QA. They actually mean that they need a quality analyst, right? Or they need a tester and those kind of things. So leaving those things aside, for me, when someone says quality assurance, then to me that means a systemic way of ensuring that the product is of, or what we are making, what we are producing is of expected quality or better. So this includes everything from putting systems in place to ensure that good quality gets produced, and also the verification process to make sure that those systems are actually working, to get that feedback loop in, to make sure that the product is of the quality that we expect it to be. So to me it's both. It's the systems that we need to put in place to ensure quality, and it's also the feedback mechanism to understand whether we are achieving those objectives.
Okay. And what about you, Jose?
No, I I tend to agree with that definition. So it's any effort that the organization takes, no, in order to ensure that quality, whether that is putting systems in place, training people, whatever it is. I would go a bit beyond as well. And I would say that it's a bit of a culture as well, no. And for me, let me qualify this a bit more. No, it's certain learned behaviors that the organization has, no, that are grounded on this values, no, or this principles behind it related to how to treat quality, yeah, and it's which the definition that Matt gave is kind of encompasses that as well. But I would like to emphasize the mindset aspect of it as we continue in the conversation, because it tends to be the problem, no, from my perspective.
Right. Yeah, because my opinion on what QA is not that different either. So I also think that quality assurance is the the way to uh, the process to verify quality across the entire flow, from all the way from an inception, like an idea, all the way to software in production, if we bring more to the software side. But it encompasses the entire processes, right? So we should be looking for quality across the entire value stream, if you like. That's how I would see it. It's not like just in a small portion of the value stream. So for me, quality assurance is a larger uh, process. And then, as Mesh said, I also see different mechanisms to measure and potentially improve those different qualities at different levels of at different stages of the value stream, if you like.
The different quality
Right?
metrics. Yeah.
Exactly, different quality metrics, and probably will lead to different quality systems for each specific area of the value stream as well. There is an umbrella system, but maybe the way that we tackle, for example, inefficiencies on the ideation or the generation of ideas or prioritization of work or distribution of work across different streams or teams and groups. So all of that would be systems in place, and there is a quality assigned to that as well. So
So we seem to be pretty aligned. Yeah.
in this
However,
bit, I think,
that's not the
yeah,
usual definition that you tend to find
yeah.
no, in
In
a lot
fact,
of
I think it'll be
organizations
good
that we
to address
work
the
with.
question that's been put there on the channel as well, right? That
Mhm.
actually talks to the fact that, as soon as you start speaking about quality assurance, immediately people think testing. And
Mhm.
maybe that's something we should address right at the
Not
start.
not only that, the question, like, just for people who are going to see this later, there is who should be responsible for the project quality if we're doing BDD? Do we need a QA person? No, and so on. And it's not only it's not only that they think about testing, but they also think that there is a person, no, or a group of people who is solely responsible for that, and everyone else is not their is not the responsibility, no, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there it lies the problem, no,
Yeah.
in many regards, because as
I
you,
think
yeah.
you like, I mean, addressing directly like behavior driven development, and like if you do BDD, do we need a QA person? Like it's such a narrow scope or narrow view on what quality assurance is. Like BDD, I mean, of course, there is it. It helps with certain aspects of ensuring quality from a systems perspective because it's helping you understand exactly what needs to be built or what you're going to build and set some expectations, and therein there is already it is a system that can help you ensure some aspect of quality, but it's just an aspect, right? And the other thing is around correctness, like do we need a QA guy? So QA guy, I assume you mean tester, but you know, even with BDD, you're not really testing. And the testing in itself, and this is and that and testing in itself, the whole scope of testing is what we call the verification mechanism in terms of correctness, basically, whether that is correctness from a features perspective or performance perspective or security perspective. All the testing is doing is allowing you to understand whether something is correct, and that is just one dimension or one aspect of quality. So
Yeah.
I
So
sorry, go on,
no, no,
Simon.
no. Finish, Mesh. I thought you were done.
No, no, I was gonna say that you know that like quality, we often kind of every time we mention quality assurance, we always go down to verification or testing, but it's actually, you know, there is much more to it. But of course, most people mean testing when we talk about quality assurance.
Yeah, I think that this is what I would say. Like, I would like to go back to the BDD question in a bit, but before I go there, I would like to talk about testing as well because this is probably important because like the a lot of companies, and even myself in the past, I did the same. To be fair, it took me a while to distinguish quality assurance and testing, and mainly because the organizations that I had contact, those words were used interchangeably, right? So, like for example, the person that asked the question, this is exactly how I saw the world as well, because like companies would say, oh, we hired some testers or we hired some QAs. So calling someone, oh, this person is performing the QA role or the tester role, they were using interchangeably as if
They
it was
mean
the same.
quality analyst, don't they? When they mention QA and quality and
Yeah.
analyst, then became tester, almost synonymous with tester as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like I see the testing or someone being a tester or a quality analyst, as you put, Mesh, as a role. Like someone may perform that role, but I don't see that as being equal to QA anymore. I think that that is just a subset of the entire quality assurance process. I see quality assurance as more as a process or
You know
a
that
group of.
I exactly. I think that the main issue in most of these organizations is that they tend to mistake, no, the practices or the roles with what you're trying to achieve, which is what we
Mhm.
discussed in the beginning, right? Like the whole concept of quality assurance and the efforts and the systems that you put in place, they tend to be reduced, no, or what's the word in English? Reductive. No, they tend to be just the parts, or they tend to see just the parts, when in reality it's much more than that. No, and a lot of effort or a lot of trust is put into the practices or into the individual responsibility,
Mhm.
when it should be tackled at a systemic, no, or a
Team level. Yeah.
whole team
Mhm.
level
Mhm.
kind of thing. And that's where I see the most conflict, right? Because it's not really about whether we have a tester. From my perspective, it's not really we have a tester or not, or how we call this person doing some responsibilities or whatever. It's about ownership, no, It's about
Mhm.
how we understand what quality is and what our role in providing that quality is. And yes, it's also about the practices, and about the
Mhm.
steps that you take, and gaining the proficiency and the skills to be able to do that. But there are many ways in which you could do that, right? We
Yeah.
tend to prefer some, but they're not the only ones, no.
Yeah.
And
The-
that's where I see a lot of the clash,
yeah.
with people.
Exactly, and one of the reasons for some the back to the BDD question, like once I want to clarify how I see that a tester is different from QA, right? So as we discussed, but then the back to the BDD thing, I think that Mesh, you touched upon that earlier. That BDD for me is just a system, is a practice that you are gonna put in place to address specific elements of the entire quality assurance of the project, because the question also talks about who should be responsible for the project quality. Yeah, if we are doing BDD, and I think that BDD or practices like BDD, and I don't know if you combine BDD like most people do with practices like the three amigos that would bring the product person, like the product owner, with the developer and with the tester together, so that they can write those scenarios, they can write those acceptance tests, they can define the requirements. Most people would call it the shifting left, right? So they would shift testing left to the beginning of the process, so that so what they are trying to do with those practices, they are tackling one element of quality, where most projects they would only identify defects later on, after the code was built, and that would generate a lot of work, because if a bug is found towards the end of the process, it needs to go back to the beginning, so that it needs to be redeveloped again, reanalyzed, redeveloped, and retested. So the aspect in terms of quality assurance, they wanted to remove that inefficiency. And one way of doing that is shifting left, bringing that a clearer definition of what needs to be done from three different perspectives, so that you minimize the chances of implementing the wrong thing and causing rework. But this is, for me, is an example of someone that has a very good view of quality assurance in general, a very wider view in terms of spotting inefficiencies in the processes, mainly caused by rework, and then they put processes in places to minimize that.
But and I think it is a very good system, and but it is a system, and in fact
Mhm.
it is looking at, if you look at
For
quality
one
metric,
specific part of it, right?
one, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, the
to
quality
address
metric
some
of
growth.
defects or the defect rates. Yeah,
Mhm.
like if you think about even the four key metrics, and there are many other metrics as well that are quality metrics, and it's, whatever you choose, they are actually related to quality. Even things like cycle time, they are related to quality, right? Even user a feedback about the product is also related to quality, right? And there are different ways of managing that quality, or uh, even like taking the other aspects of quality would be related to, for example, technical debt. How much of a mess are we making while we are moving things? How much are we slowing down? That can then be traced back to things like cycle time and so on. But there are many different aspects. If you look at each one of these things, they are a quality metric. And then what you do is you are measuring them. So from in a defects perspective, the way you measure defects is by testing, right? Or by user reports around defects, by monitoring those and so on. But that is a measure. So testing is actually a feedback, it's a measure. You measure defects through testing, or some of, at least some parts of defects are measured through testing. And simply, so the way I see it, and the three amigos thing is actually putting a system in place that is reducing that, or increasing the quality of defect rate, or right, or failure rate, or whatever. It's making it less likely to have defects because of misunderstood requirements, because of misunderstood, like miscommunication, all those kind of things. But there are many other things as well. And to me, a quality someone, the not is someone, but the quality assurance um, concern is actually related to all of these things, to put
Mhm.
a lot of these systems in place, so that you're not creating waste, that you're actually preempting a lot of the things that may go wrong, and you're trying to get things right the first time, as it were.
You, if I may, because Sandra said something before, like the shift left kind of thing, and this is not a new idea in the sense that, since the 70s, with the total quality movement and all this idea came, has been, people have been banging on that drum for a very long time.
Yeah,
The idea of customer centricity, of communication, of continuous improvement, etc., etc., and you have there's a lot of processes, no, in software development that have taken things from that movement, no, in order to get to where we are
Mhm.
today. No, the whole idea of the PDCA cycle and all of this stuff, right? So it is something that is well known, or at least we've been trying to get right no for a
well,
very long time.
yeah, I mean, the whole process used to be called total TQM, total quality management. That was the name of the whole manufacturing process and the way they did it, right? So to them, quality was central, and they designed the process around it, right?
Exactly, exactly. But the thing here, and I'm sorry that I'm going back to the cultural aspect of this, is that in the 70s, when this idea became, let's say, more prominent, it's because Japanese companies and Asian companies were kind of making car manufacturers in the no, in the West eat dust, right? And they were like, what the hell? What are these people doing here? No, and the Japanese did not call it total quality management. They didn't have this system that no, we later came to. Okay, so we need to put some. So and there was a cultural aspect to that, right? The whole idea of the focus on the customer, on treating systems and fixing systems instead of focusing on people. No, and there's a lot of stuff in there uh, that is very effective when you look at the whole picture. Because yes, you may introduce a practice, yeah, but in reality, if you're not learning from what is going on, no, from for me, it's a learning system, so to speak, right? Like you find you're delivering your value, you're finding ways in which to test, let's say, how fit for purpose is the stuff that you are delivering, yeah, and then you take that knowledge that comes out of the tests that you're making, no, and you put it back into the system itself, no, and improve on that, right? And if you don't close that loop, there's no, you can be doing BDD wrong for years, right? Like it's what you can be doing using the practices and stuff if you're not complementing that with with the external loop, no, in your system, no, if you're not complementing that with that cultural aspect of people's awareness and focus on the customer and etc., etc., those things are not going to give you 100% of what they could, right? At least that's from my perspective, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a few questions in there, or comments that are people are asking about. They are mentioning QA, but they are also maybe referring that to testing or how QA is done in certain companies and stuff. So
In fact,
uh,
sorry, in
uh,
fact, Emmanuel
yeah,
thought that QA was question and answer.
yeah, I saw that.
And it's a
Yeah,
good
Emmanuel.
question as well, actually. And
Yeah, it's an easy mistake to make, Emmanuel. So it's not an issue. So the so there are, because we can take the conversation upwards to the culture assurance on the process side, but I believe that given the comments, people are more focused on bringing that down to the actual role of the what some people would call QA or testers, or how that is implemented in different companies. So for example, German is saying that is asking if the QA role evolved in the last decade, and he sees that some companies still have dedicated QA teams doing manual testing. And Lori's also mentioned having QA for exploratory testing. But every time that she sees it as a role, I've seen manual regression testing increase, which is
it's a
similar
very
to
good
what
question.
German was talking about as well. So maybe we go down first.
Mhm.
So the there are so many things to talk about in here. So different companies call things different ways. So in some companies, you are right. My experience is similar to yours, where they have a QA department, and that QA department is has people that are executing test scripts, normally manually. They have all those test scripts documentation. Normally, like this is very common in German. At least I know that you are in Argentina, if I'm not wrong. But like here, we see that still mainly in regulated environments like investment banks, pharmaceuticals, healthcare. So industries like that, where the cost of a bug is quite high, uh, you see a more formal QA approach or more formal QA departments, and they tend to use manual processes because those test scripts is not only that there's a bunch of people following test scripts, but they also serve as a formal step in the compliance, right? So they need to verify that the software is compliant to certain test scripts that are executed. So there is a documentation of those tests, and through that process, then the company can attest that the software is suitable to be used, and so on and so forth. So we don't see that very often in environments where don't need this rigor to release software to production. But in those companies, they see QA as more traditional manual steps and stuff. Other companies, they have what their definition of QA. They have what people automating tests. Their job is just to automate tests. More often than not, tests at if it was the test pyramid, they would be the ones at the top of the pyramid, which end up causing an inverted pyramid. But they would automate tests through the UI, like using Selenium or through the APIs. They would use all those kind of tests that would test the system as a whole, either through the UI or through their APIs, and that's their job, to automate that kind of test. So this leads us to a question I would like to pass the ball to Mesh and Jose. Is how do you see the role of a tester, or what some people call QA? What should be their role, their responsibility when it comes to quality assurance? But that person that is closer to the development, you know, how do you see those things?
Well, one thing is, I mean, I'll there's one question that is around manual testing or exploratory testing, yeah, and uh, there is a fact developers don't make good exploratory testers because especially if they're the ones who built that feature, right? Because they have this maker mindset, and it gets very difficult for them to go into the breaker mindset. The other thing is that the mindset of an exploratory tester is a whole product mindset. They are thinking about certain aspects, they understand, and they're not some junior. They fully understand the weak points in the product from a technical deployments and from features perspective, and they empathize with the user and how the user may use and may break the system, and they even understand even more complex things on how the system is deployed in production environments and where its weak points may be. And so there is a role of a tester, right, who actually understand in a more from a holistically the product's strengths and weaknesses, understand the features being developed, understand how those features may touch on those weaker points, and then is able to look at even unrelated things that may break. And this is not a bad role. And it and I think one of the people said, well, it conflicts with continuous delivery. It doesn't, and that's a much longer conversation on whether that is, and that's more related to how the thing is deployed and how your processes are designed as well. But there is a very good point that when you start getting lots of manual testers or exploratory testers, but they're actually just manual regression testers in the guise of a good quality assurance engineer or a good tester or a good manual tester. And yes, what they are doing is they're doing regression testing. They're following the script, whether the script is written or it's in their head. They're just going through the same things and they're doing regression testing, and that's toil, and that is bad. You shouldn't be doing that manually too often, right? If it's the first time, second time, and so on. But if you keep doing it over and over again, obviously that's very slow, and that's not where people's skills should be. Then there is the question around test automation itself, right? Test automation, and this is just my view, tests written are software. And if you are a test automator, then you are a software developer, right? And then what happens is often the test automation engineers are often the ones, it's the job given to the more junior developers, or not even people who may be coming into development roles. And this is a mistake, because actually this is software. It's it can actually slow you down more if that's written badly than the production software itself, because often when you have comprehensive testing, your test code base is bigger than your production code base. And so when you start having junior people or people who are not full-time developers automating, then you get into a world of pain. And to me, I think that therein is a, if for example someone calls themselves a test automation engineer, but is a really good developer of tests, great. But if it's someone who is not a good developer test, who doesn't know how to maintain that whole code base, doesn't know how, doesn't have the same rigor as you would have in production code, then you've got a problem in my view.
Yeah, and I believe that many people watching this, I don't know if you had that experience, but I believe that quite a few of you had, where you see those gigantic test suites being built by, well, over many years and by a bunch of people. And those test suites, they are very difficult to maintain. They are very slow to run. And quite often, what we see, very often they are failing as well because they take a few hours to run. uh, they tend to run overnight. No developer will run those things locally because it takes way too long. So they will just finish their stuff, push that to the main branch, and let the thing run overnight. And next day they check. Quite often, this thing is always red. And because the test suite takes too long and is always broken, at some point people stop caring about it. And then you are in the worst case scenario that you have a very expensive test suite to maintain that you cannot rely on. And as Mesh was saying, those tests normally written by the test automators, like some people call developers in test, or that's how what they expect from their testers. Some of those tests, because of where the kind of the boundaries of those tests, because the boundaries, the unit under test for the test written by QA, they tend to be the entire system or systems,
Like
right?
black
So they
box
test
almost.
exactly most black box coming through the UI, quite often including database calls, other systems calls. When you have the microservices, they might have a lot of systems running at the same time. Those tests are the hardest tests to write. They're far harder to write than a unit test at a class level or a method level, right? So the degree of engineering that you need to have a very reliable and fast test suite at that level to give you value is immense. So in theory, you should have some of your best engineers to write those tests
You
and
know,
not your your least qualified developers, let's say, to do them.
that triggered a thought in me when you said they're the hardest test, and I think I would qualify that a bit more. They are they're not hard tests to write. They are easier to write. They are complex,
Right.
right? So they introduce a lot of complexity. But they often, they will call a bunch of APIs, then get the results, and they find, yeah, and it's actually they're not that difficult to write because you're treating the API. You don't have to mock anything. You're using the system that's already running in QA environment, right? But what they do is they are complex in what the impact that they have in your system is unseen to you. So the kind of dependencies that they are utilizing and that need to be in place for them to work, you don't even see. So you introduce this so much complexity by just calling that thing and verifying on it, or that API and verifying on it. From a tester's perspective, from black box tester's perspective, it was an easy test to write. But then to make it run, to make it always work, and to make sure that it's well maintained, and that when developers are changing things, that for it to then go wrong right down the chain somewhere in the sense of the value stream, you kind of shifting it right basically rather than
Mm.
left, right? So I would qualify it more. They are easier to write, but they are actually very
Mhm.
complex.
Jose,
One.
just before you go, I just want to
Mhm.
clarify because I now that you mentioned mesh, I didn't express myself well because you are right. They tend to be easier to write because they are black box. What I meant by they are the hardest test to write is to have a test suite that is efficient and that can work well. So in order for you to write tests at that level, that you can run them very fast
And
and not having
sustain
to
them.
wait exactly, not to have them to wait like hours and hours. And also the tests at that level, they are very brittle as well. Because when they break, it's very difficult to pinpoint where the problem is. Because that their information, the information that they display when something fails, it's almost like, for example, if you have a big monolith and it's testing through the UI and something doesn't happen, it's very difficult now to figure out, to go inside the monolith and figure out exactly what went wrong and where. So this is what I meant by the complexity. I think that you made the correct point. It's not that they're difficult, they are complex. The complexity in having a test suite that is efficient and that you can rely upon, you need a high degree of engineering in order to benefit from them and not for them to be a burden.
I was gonna add to that because it seems like we're going into, let's say, anti patterns that we see or most common mistakes that we see. But I think the question that we were kind of trying to answer, I think people were kind of asking, is like, what does then a good QA need to do, right? Like we know, like we it's painful. We all feel the pain when this is not working, and there's a lot of stuff we could talk a lot more about those. But for instance, well, to pick one thing that for me needs to happen, even if you are a good engineer and you're taking care of these the top part of the pyramid and so on, is that before you mentioned unit tests or whatever, like part of the job will be to build the capability in the team for them to take ownership of the quality and the maintenance of that testing strategy that is put in place in order to improve the product, or at least catch the issues as they come, right? So for me, it will be there will be a strategic aspect, yeah, of a good quality engineer, yeah, like, okay, so this is our pyramid. This is what we're going. These components we're going to test at this level. These components we're going to test at this other level. We're going to complement it like this. These are the happy paths, whatever. Like getting that overview of how the system needs to be tested and understanding the general, not only the system but also what the strategy is, so that there are no holes. For me, that's important. It's important transmitting that to the team, or communicating that to the team, or if, created with the team, if that's the case or whatever, right? I'm not saying no, but there needs to be that aspect as well. There needs to be an aspect of building up the skills in the team. So you before I totally agree. Like, you need to be a good engineer, software engineer, if you're going to be doing this stuff, right? Like, you need to be able to write your unit test and your integration test and your end-to-end test, and you need to be on top of tools that will make your job easier as well, right? Because sometimes we uh, suffer a lot, no, because we don't know the right tools, right? Or we don't work enough on getting the right tools or the right context in place, no, to be able to do these things. So that for me is also an aspect. There's an aspect of product as well, yeah. And this goes back to the BDD question and so on. A lot of the times when good QAs are working with the product side in order to understand what the behavior is, etc., what they need to test, they're also helping them clarify or specify the system better, right? And posing questions that the product may not have answers to, right? So that aspect of dealing with the rest of the organization and managing stakeholders and being able to uh, get people to align and to agree on what the issues are, and all of these problem solving skills and consultancy skills for me are key as well, right? So of course this is not a role that, if you have all of this stuff, right, like it's not a role that is, I would say, easy, and it requires someone with a degree of experience, no, that goes beyond automating tests, for
So,
sure, in my
Jose,
opinion.
Mesh,
sorry, go on.
Yeah.
no, I just want to clarify before you go, Mesh. Like, just want to clarify, Jose. Like when you mentioned that this person needs to also help to create the testing strategy and stuff. So, and many other things that you mentioned. How would you call like this role? How would you name that role?
Quality assurance engineer.
Quality
That's
assurance
what I would
engineer.
All
call
right,
it.
okay.
Okay.
So my question to you, Jose, is that, like, we are asking, we basically asking for something to be born fully formed, right? Because we don't have, when you talk about developer, you have junior developers and you have senior developers.
Mhm.
And at the most, one of the most senior levels, we would expect the senior developers to have a lot of these leadership aspects that you just talked about. Why
Mhm.
do we not have, why, when we talk about a quality assurance engineer or a tester, that we immediately look for the most senior level? What about the more junior levels of a tester or a
The
quality
more
assurance
junior
engineer?
levels are fine. Like you can't. Of course, this is another aspect that we maybe should discuss, because it's how do you get to be that experienced QA, QA person, right?
That is a
Uh,
QA lead, basically, what you are
no,
talking
it's
about. Yeah.
fine, it's fine. But this is the thing. Like a lot of the issues that you mentioned before, like the test, for me, they come from lack of experience, and they come from like if you've already know that that's going to happen, right? You can put things in place. So I wouldn't, like, if you can, you should start with someone who's already got the experience, and then build all of the intermediary steps, if you will. No, the problem is when you, okay, I'm gonna build this capability, and then you start at the point and stay there, and that never evolves, because none of the people who are there that are have that are getting into the thing know where it needs to go, right? Or know how to continue evolving it, at least at the speed that most organizations need it, right? And this is the thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't have junior developers that are going into QA, or junior QAs that are coming. They're more from the manual testing slash BA kind of role, that are moving careers, or they're moving into a different area. That's fine. Yeah, I'm just saying, if you really want a full form thing, you need someone that has a bit more than just that, right? That's where my head is.
It's almost, we're almost asking the impossible, right? Because I mean, this is one of the reasons that we don't actually find what we look for. So, for example, at Coherence, we don't have any QAs because the
That's not
maybe
that's
what
not necessarily. I mean, maybe Koreans UK you don't have any QAs,
no
and
no
I'm saying this because there may
yeah
be people watching this stream as well.
yeah yeah
So
yeah no, sorry, Coherence UK. I'm so what, but what I'm saying is that at Coherence UK, I'll just talk about Coherence, we look for that role for a long time, and we found it very difficult. We couldn't find one, right? And I'm sure there are many, but they are few and far between, and they are almost kind of freaks of nature in a way, right? But what I'm actually trying to say is that, given what you just told me, the logical path for a good senior QA engineer does not come through a tester, right? Because if you are if you follow the path of a tester, right, they normally, their test automation, they don't have, the same, let's say, opportunities to build their software development skills and their software design skills and all those kind of things that
with
we
those
expect
two,
from software development.
but
And they don't
I
even
agree.
have that kind of a ladder to get to the point where
I
they
kind
are
of disagree with that, because
great
when you say,
developers.
but when you say it doesn't come through a tester, what do you mean exactly? Because yes, they may not be exposed. There may be a bigger gap in the things that they need to learn in order to get to that point. But I think the path is kind of the same. That most people in that role, they learn by working with other people that know what they do. It's kind of like, no,
But
the chicken and
they're
egg
already
kind of
like their
thing.
software development
Right?
skills are already quite narrow because they've only been working on tests.
And I tend to agree with Mesh, and this probably will be a good segue to the two questions that we have on the chat now. That is, do you think that all tester needs to know how to programming, or what's the point of an automated tester in a TDD context? And that there's an assumption here that, of course, that any teams, modern teams following extreme programming practices, have TDD and BDD as part of their uh, process. So the test automation will come by default, right? By the ways of developing software. So I agree to a good degree with Mesh that, like, the when we talk about my view of a quality engineer or quality assurance engineer, given what you defined, you said, Jose, I also agree that it's very difficult to get there through a normal testing role. So first of all, answering those two questions, I personally don't think that testers should code or write automated tests personally, right? So I will go back to that and I will expand, but just so I explain what I'm
Just to drop the grenade,
just no
let it
exactly.
explode,
Now we're
and then after
interested.
everyone is calm, then I'll.
Exactly. But I personally don't think that testers should be automating tests. But the but because, like, for me, the tests at that level, they should be done by engineers, and that's when we call the role a quality assurance engineer, which is a term that I like personally, is the one that I like the most, given everything we discussed. I believe that this person, as Masha was saying, needs to have a lot of experience in order to be able to define the test pyramid and mentor and help the development teams to write tests at multiple levels, and in a way that they don't create those monstrosities that there are those test suites that take hours to run and are always broken.
Sorry, one thing then. When you say they should not automate, you mean they should not be the ones maybe doing it, but they should have the capability to do it. No, like they should have the skill to do it or the knowledge to do it.
I've
Because
been
otherwise,
changing
how
my
are they
no
gonna
no
know what is
I,
right or what is wrong and
I've been
mentor
changing my
someone?
mind about these over time. So, in fact, I don't even know if I ever made my mind about what the tester should do. And so, the thing is, for me, because we are a company that, and me myself, like, I've been doing TDD for a long time, and so as Loris wrote on the channel, like, so because we work in a specific way, most of our test automation comes as a side effect of the way that we build software. However, that doesn't mean that we developers we tend to be quite okay in writing unit tests and stuff, but not all developers can write good tests at the top of the pyramid. And that's where I think that someone with a lot of experience and a lot of with architectural experience and combined with business experience, because you mentioned both, Jose, that is the engineering side, so that they understand how the system is architected, what are the operational requirements for the system, what are all the different moving parts, and where are the places where we could have an issue where with lack of communication or performance and so on and so forth. But there's also the business elements that will define the main business flows through the various services and so on and so forth. So someone that can understand that kind of complexity, both business and architecture, and can help to create an efficient testing strategy that is fully automated, is someone that needs to have a huge degree of experience, right? And normally this person will tend to come in through a more technical background. I personally think that, and just going back, I know that you probably have a lot of things to say on top of what I just said, but just to go back to the bomb that I just dropped, another way of thinking about the reason that I mentioned that I think that tests should not code. When you talk about all those different roles, for example, you talk about a product owner. So this person has a special, well, we like to think that has an area of expertise. Let's say that is product development. They understand products, the needs of a client, what feature needs to be developed. Someone that is a developer, clearly that area of expertise will be building software, code and architecture and so on. There will be someone that is related to the cloud, the platform engineer, their area of expertise, the area that are strongest than anyone else is their knowledge of the cloud and everything else. So what I'm trying to say is that every single role that are part of the team, they bring some expertise to the table that is superior than any other one else. So most people will have an overlap. A developer might understand a little bit about platform, and the platform might understand a bit about whatever the product or whatever else. But each one of those roles, they bring their own area of expertise to the table. But what I see, at least in a lot of companies, the tester, they are they try to do some test automation, which normally they have their technical skills or programming skills are not as strong as any of the developers, and they don't bring anything else to the table. So the actual testing disciplines that they should master, they don't have, because uh, they are tasked to do test automation, which they cannot do as well as a developer should do. So for me, what I would like to see, I'm not saying by no means that we should not have testers. What I'm saying is that they should not try to do the work that someone else can do better. And they should bring to the table, like all the other roles, skills that are specific to their discipline. And testing as a discipline has loads of skills. There is a lot of studies in there in what to test, how to test, investigate. So the I would like to understand more about what are those areas of expertise, so they have a proper seat at the table, like we try to do with the three amigos, bringing them. When we bring the testers, when we're shifting left, we are not shifting left their programming skills or automation skills. We are bringing to the left, to the forefront of the development, their analytical skills. I don't know if I can call that.
Well, no, it's quality analysis. That's where the
Yeah,
QA, the quality
exactly.
analyst word comes from, right?
Is that ability to spot, given what needs to be done, what can be broken, what can go wrong, and where. So, and this is a core discipline for a tester that no one else, no other role will have as strong as the others. And I think that that's what they should bring to the table instead of trying to do a poor job as an automator. This is why I say that they should not write tests.
Now, but by the way, there is one thing. Sorry, Jose, I'm kind of jumping in, but there is one thing that we do have to qualify. We are in a way just talking about feature tests. We're talking about tests that are a testing the product. Yeah. So I think at this time, and I know like Brian Merrick's kind of testing quadrant is slated somewhat, and some people love it and others hate it. But there is an important point in what he has as well, because when we talk about test driven development, we talk about, if you take his terminology, is the tests that are supporting development, supporting the team. They're not often not the ones that are critiquing the product as a whole. So testing from he has that in his quadrant, like supporting the team or critiquing the product, right? What kind of test is it? Does it support the team or does it critique the product? And in like tests like at a high level, which are actually testing the product from a holistic perspective, tests at a like that are testing the performance, that are testing deployment aspects, all those kind of tests, uh, we often find that developers, feature based developers, especially at the kind of less senior levels are not very good at writing.
Yeah, and so I think that there is.
Sandra, one thing, like,
Oh, sorry.
because I definitely don't agree with that, right? Like, just like there is some overlap between the roles and stuff, I think they should know how to do this, and they should do it. If they're good, they should do it proficiently. I'm not saying they need to be the best or anything like that, but they should be able to do it, right? Otherwise, they're not gonna grow into that level of expertise that we were discussing before. From my perspective, right? They need to be able to do that in order to gauge whether something is good or not, whether, like, what potential solutions it could be, or to point people in the right direction. Even the other thing that I kind of disagree with is, like, no, don't try to do something that other people can do better than you. Well, that is if that developer that you are kind of trying to, let's say, do something that they could do, knows what they're doing. Because a lot of, I mean, of course there's many markets and there's many, but the reality is, at least in Spain, that most people haven't heard of TDD or use it in their data. So even if they've been programming for 10 years, yeah, testing is something that they're completely new at. And I think someone with that background and some programming knowledge can probably teach them quite a few things. So from my perspective, it really depends on the maturity of that market and those developers and the practices that you're talking about, which is not the case this year in Spain. Yeah, and when we're talking about the growing and making it, no, the other point that Mash was mentioning, like, it is true for me that they tend to come from a software engineering background, right? So precisely because they come from a software engineering background, the gap that they need to fill is a lot smaller, right? Like, they have a lot of knowledge through the career and developing software and so on and so forth, that someone who's not, who hasn't been doing that, needs to go through and needs to learn. And the gap is bigger, but not impossible either, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, don't feel disheartened. No, if that's the case with you, just put on the effort and try to fill that gap. You don't need to be an expert in everything. Like, you're not going to be the one developing software or defining an architecture or whatever, but you need to have some notions of that thing. I know. And also, this is something that, by working with people who are really good at their job, you can also kind of acquire in that sense, right?
No, sorry, finish.
Right.
No, finish your point.
Which takes me to, I was going to change points now. I've been waiting quite
All
some
right.
time now. So if you want to say something on
You
this,
got
go
2
ahead
minutes.
and
You
say.
got 2 minutes. Old habits die
I
hard.
was gonna bring I was gonna bring in a new topic.
Of course. No, I do have things to say on this one before we move, but like, I'll try to be as brief as I can. But like, for example, I think that someone that is trying to specialize in test automation, they're more a developer than a tester, right? So because they are bringing more developer skills, architecture skills, because mainly at the level that they automate, those test suites are very complex, not the individual tests that they write, but in creating an efficient test suite at that level, the degree of understanding that they need to have is quite big. So in my view, they are people coming from a developer's background, or if they come through a different background, it doesn't matter. But because their main job is to write code that happens to test other code, they are more developers than a tester. A tester, for me, is a separate discipline. Test automation is not, for me, the same as testing, right? Testing, for me, is a discipline like software development, like product management, like business analysis. Like, business analysis is a discipline. There are skills in how you go about business analysis that no one else has. Operations or cloud experience. So those are disciplines. And the testers, for example, you cannot just have like someone that is writing a lot of code to test other systems, but they are not bringing the testing disciplines. For me, the testing disciplines are, let me analyze the entire system. Let's analyze what are the business flows, what are the failures, what are the technical issues and the business issues that I can spot, And where would those failures happen more often? What are the most common scenarios? Where are the places that we should really stress? What are the places that will be very difficult to automate? So then, like one of the people in the chat wrote, that would be better maybe to do some exploratory testing in there. And those are like, for example, there are disciplines related to tests that no one else will have, and they are nothing to do with test automation. And that's the point that I was trying to make.
No, I agree. I agree. Again, it's not a.
That's why some people call it developer in tests and not a tester. And that's what for me is probably a better name for someone that is focused on test automation. They are a developer focused on developing software that are testing software, but they are more a developer than a tester.
They call them test automation engineers as well. I think that's actually a good name. It's a test automation engineer, but they are a software engineer. Yeah. And I think you made some very good points there. Yeah, like we often forget that there are a lot of, and by the way, this is kind of generalizing specialist thing. A developer has business analyst skills, but not to the level that a specialized business analyst does, and so on and so on. And the same goes for tester as well, right? A tester and has skills around understanding the weak points and understanding where there are risks, given what the change and the way the change is coming, where there are risks to the system, and a very good opinion and on how to then efficiently and effectively verify that those weak points are still holding, and to keep this effort sustainable over time. Those are skills that they are in the testing discipline, and of course,
and that's what we bring to the
them.
left. This is what we bring to the left. Those are the value. That's why we want them to work at the top of the process. Those are the skills that we value on a tester, not their automation skills. That's not what we are shifting left. So that's a different way
I
of thinking.
I think in coming to Jose's point as well, given the context that if you've got developers who just simply don't know how to write tests well, and you have a automation engineer, test automation engineer who does, then of course that's also a good place for them.
By the way, I call it a quality assurance engineer, not test automation, because test automation for me is someone who's automating tests. And when I purposely called it like that, because again, it's someone whose responsibility over the quality assurance process, and the quality assurance of the whole system is there, right? And yes, that may include in some organizations doing the role of automating whatever, right? But not every organization.
Yeah, a quality assurance engineer has test automation engineering as one of their skill sets, but they have many other ones which are arguably more important.
That are more important. I agree. I agree. And again, it's a matter of every context is different. No, what I was trying to express, so to speak, is if you're going for bringing that into your team, no matter what, bringing quality or that that mindset into your team, that's the kind of stuff that I would expect someone taking ownership for that to be doing, right? Independently of how you call them. Like if you are again, when we talk about roles, like for me, testing, tester is also a role, right? Like when you're writing unit tests, you're doing the tester role.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it is a hat that you
disagree.
can put on. No?
So this is the bit that I changed my mind. It's not that I changed my mind on this. I don't think that when you are writing automated tests, you are playing the tester role. I don't think you are. Right. So I think that you are still doing an engineering job, a software developer's job that is trying to verify that what you are building works according to what you expect.
So you are testing whether what you build is correct or not?
You are checking, but you are not performing the role. Like you are not applying the disciplines of what a tester.
You're not applying everything. Yeah, I agree.
So the same way.
but you
No,
do
no,
have to put yourself in that.
a parallel that I would do is just to prove to try to emphasize the difference that I'm trying to make is a developer needs to understand the requirements before they implement code or while they're implementing the code. They also need to understand how the system works so that the new change can be added to the system. So they are both performing a product role. So by the same definition, they are performing a product role and a business analyst role. And I don't think that that is exactly the case. They need to understand what the product should do so that they can implement the code. They need to understand what the system does so that they can fit that thing in. So they need to do some business analysis, even technical business analysis. But that doesn't mean that they are a business analyst. They are wearing, I think that it would be too simplistic to say that they are wearing the business analyst and they are wearing the product stuff. Like they need to understand those things, but they are not a business analyst at that point. They are not a product person at that point. Those were have been discussed already, and now they are implementing. They are still a
They,
developer.
I think it's a bit more
I made a
complicated. I mean, they
yeah.
are.
It was difficult for me to explain what I wanted.
Yeah, I think it's that, again, it goes back to what is core and what else they're doing, right? Every developer, whether they're, by the way, whether they automate or not, and whether they use TDD or not, they have to verify, right? So you build something, and you even have to run the thing and manually verify that it works. That you always have to verify what you wrote actually works, right? So there is an element of verification, whether we call it testing or not. There is an element of understanding the business and making sure that your requirements, whether we call it business analysis or not, testers and business analysts and so on, of course they do it at a much grander scale. They apply much more of a deliberate discipline to it, and they are the ones that can lead those kind of efforts to help you understand things better at the wider scale. But in a way, a programmer is the weird one in software development, because they of course, other people do general things when they are specializing in one, but they do other aspects of the job, and this is part of being a good team. But a developer is almost at the core of this activity, and they end up touching a lot of the other disciplines more so than the other disciplines do. But there is but we can't say that they are testing. It's not that they're not testing. They are a developer, because the core of their work is software development, right? Similarly, the core of the quality assurance engineer, they might be doing some writing some tests or doing some automation, but the core of their role is quality assurance.
Yeah. So let's try to wrap up now. So let's do the final
What do you mean? We're not
considerations.
gonna talk about security as part of quality
Oh,
As
this
always,
is
I
a
say I
this
will
is
drop a new topic. So no, just to finalize, let's talk about something completely different now. And so no, let's do some final considerations. So what are your final words or considerations, guys, after everything we discussed?
I can start, because I think I kind of made the final final one anyway. I think that there are a bunch of things that, like, the way I see it is that our conversation went over two parts. There is quality assurance, and which is the job of the whole team, right? And then there is the quality assurance engineer, which is a specific discipline in testing. We often conflate the two, and I think it will be a good start to actually know which one we mean. And if we mean quality assurance engineer, then within it, there is this whole aspect of test automation. And then there is the aspect of quality assurance, or leading the quality assurance effort, in particular, the verification aspect, right? Uh, and those are two things. I think we need to be very clear on what we are talking about. The other thing is that I am still not convinced that we have a good ladder, a good development plan in the industry as a whole, where we are naturally building good quality insurance engineers, because you don't find many of them. And that's why I call them freaks of nature. When you find a good one, you better hold on to them, because there's not a lot of them. I think that the ladder, the process of developing good quality assurance engineers, is kind of broken in our industry. And that goes back to the point of the topic of this fireside chat, which is that is one of the most misunderstood roles in software development.
Yeah, I agree. I would also say that we there is an aspect that I guess we didn't discuss enough, which is the role of the this QA engineer or whatever in making sure that that quality or that quality assurance effort actually happens, and the difficulties that there are with that. Perceptions, and just managing that kind of mindset change, which I think is quite difficult, and they find themselves often uh, kind of alone, in that regard, in many organizations. So that mindset change, I think, is quite important as well, right? If you really want that to move forward, no, the continuous improvement aspect, the overlaps, and people being able to put on different hats and think differently beyond their responsibilities or their role, I think is quite key. And it's something that independently of the role or the label that you want to give, no, to these people doing this work, is necessary if you really want to build quality software, whether that is you taking ownership for that, or someone else, or it's necessary. I don't, in one form or another, if you want good software out the door, someone needs to be taking care of those things, otherwise it's not going to happen. That's what my
Yeah.
take on it, huh?
Okay. Yeah, and from my side, like I think that there are also two sides of this conversation. There is quality assurance as a system, and I think that someone that is responsible for the whole system. I don't think that like shared ownership works as well. I think that everyone needs to contribute for the quality of the entire value stream, if you like, of course. But it's difficult for everyone that are involved in different parts of the value stream to look after the entire value stream quality. And I think that someone that can have that kind of visibility is someone that is quite experienced in many disciplines to spot all those inefficiencies, and not only spot them, but be able to guide the fix to those inefficiencies, right? And then we have the role of a tester. And the more I think about it, I think that the name tester is not a good name. I think that it does us a disfavor because it doesn't really qualify exactly what that person does. We mentioned different kind of roles or names that are more specific, like the quality assurance engineer, or Mesh, you mentioned the quality, no, the test automator, test automation
Test
engineer,
automation engineer, yeah.
right? So those roles are more specific. They are more aligned to a specific discipline as well. Um, I think that testing is important, but I also have the way I think is that every role that we combine in a software project, they need to bring an area of expertise to the table, right? So they have a area where, although they might know, like the whole T-shaped thing that you mentioned, Jose, and the overlaps of roles. So although you as a professional, you might understand other disciplines, but there is one area that you master, and you are, or people with that role, they are stronger than the other roles. And that's what they bring to the table. And I think that what I see in most organizations right now, the people that are labeled as testers or QA, they don't bring that to the table. That's not what they bring to the table. What they bring is some they automate tests, not as always as well as a developer would do, but they fail to bring what we want them to bring when we want to shift left QA. When we are shifting left, the core QA disciplines or testing disciplines that are different from test automation. Test automation for me is not even part of testing or the testing disciplines, right? I would consider as part of engineering or software development disciplines. And someone performing that role, for me, they are more a software developer than actually a tester. And the testing disciplines means like, can I spot the vulnerabilities? Can I spot like where we should be focusing the tests? What we should be worried about when we implement the new feature, right? If we want to do this, we should be worried about this, and that. right? So we need to make sure that those things are not going to be in conflict. And those are specific skills, or even like, for example, as someone mentioned in the chat, like the exploratory tests. What are the things that are very difficult to test? Like we are not covering those things in here. There is a risk that we might introduce bugs in here or there because we are not doing this. Those are specific testing disciplines that a developer will not have. But the actual automation is more a software engineer discipline. This is where that's where my head is right now with this whole thing. I know that we just had the final ones, but anything else we want to share?
Any final?
Any final?
No, no, I think it's a topic that we could probably do another session on, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. No, I guess we can close.
Excellent. We can close it now. Well, I'd like to thank everyone that have been with us for an hour and 15 minutes. So it's good to be back and doing those live
breaking records. I think this is one of the longest sessions that we had.
So if you enjoyed this chat, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button because it helps to promote the video to more people as well. And I hope to see you again.
And the notification as well, because that way you can know when the next live stream is it will tell you.
Exactly. So we will try to do that live every Tuesday at the same time, but make sure that you are subscribed so you get notified. Right. I see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.